Hey everyone, Brandon here from TruckSafe Consulting. The highway transportation industry is no stranger to the long-standing debate on the legalization of marijuana in the United States. In fact, that debate plays directly into one of the main components of the safety-related regulatory scheme for highway motor carriers, which is drug and alcohol testing for commercial drivers. Commercial drivers, at least those subject to the federal motor carrier safety regulations, have long been prohibited from using marijuana, even despite various states' efforts to legalize the substance for medicinal and/or recreational use within their borders. This fact is well established, but what is less established is the impact of CBD use among commercial drivers. So in this video, we're going to tackle this subject and highlight the risks that come with CBD use by commercial drivers. So stay tuned, and if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe below to stay up to date on all of our new DOT-related content. So there's no question the use of CBD products has skyrocketed over the past few years. And although there have not yet been any comprehensive studies on these products to fully understand their effects, many people are turning to them to help relieve pain and other ailments. According to some studies, upwards of 33% of Americans have used some form of CBD. So what exactly is it? Well, as a general matter, CBD is primarily a hemp derivative, which is a close relative to marijuana. In fact, both hemp and marijuana fall into the cannabis genus. Cannabis plants contain two compounds, cannabidiol, CBD, and tetrahydrocannabinol, THC. While both CBD and THC are cannabinoids, only THC has a psychoactive effect on the human body. Thus, as a general proposition, CBD does not produce that same high effect as THC. Marijuana and hemp contain both CBD and THC, but in different amounts. Marijuana containing much more THC, which can lead to impairment, and is why that substance remains illegal in most states and at the federal level. So as a general rule, hemp-derived CBD products, those containing less than 0.3% THC, are legal in every state. And because many contain little to no THC, they are typically safe for use among the general population. However, with very few regulations governing these products, manufacturers are not being held accountable for ensuring their products do in fact contain the low levels of THC that they advertise. And therein lies the problem, particularly for commercial drivers. You see, as it stands, marijuana remains an illegal Schedule I substance as classified under the Federal Controlled Substances Act. This is despite the various states' efforts to legalize the substance for medicinal or recreational use within their borders. Now, it's this tension between federal and state laws on this topic that creates a significant amount of ambiguity. This is particularly true given the politicizing of this issue. In fact, we've seen directly conflicting enforcement bulletins from the Federal Drug Enforcement Agency, just depending on what political party happens to be in office at the time. So with this in mind, the U.S. Department of Transportation has remained steadfast in its assertion that federally regulated transportation employees, including commercial drivers, remain prohibited from using marijuana while that substance remains illegal at the federal level. In 2017, the U.S. DOT's Office of Drug and Alcohol Policy posted a notice which remains in effect to this day and states, in part, that recently some states have passed initiatives to permit the use of marijuana for so-called recreational purposes. We, meaning the U.S. DOT, have had several inquiries about whether these state initiatives will have an impact upon the DOT's long-standing regulation about the use of marijuana by safety-sensitive transportation employees, including pilots, school bus drivers, truck drivers, train engineers, subway operators, aircraft maintenance personnel, transit, firearms security personnel, ship captains, and pipeline emergency response personnel, among others. We, again the DOT, wants to make it perfectly clear that the state initiatives will have no bearing on the DOT's regulated drug testing program. The department's drug and alcohol testing regulation, which appears at 49 CFR Part 40, does not authorize the use of Schedule I drugs, including marijuana, for any reason. Therefore, medical review officers will not verify a drug test as negative based upon learning that the employee used recreational marijuana when states have passed recreational marijuana initiatives. We also firmly reiterate that the MRO will not verify a drug test negative based upon information that a physician has recommended that the employee use medical marijuana when states have passed medical marijuana initiatives. So, despite state legalization of marijuana, the substance remains illegal for use among those subject to the federal drug and alcohol testing regulations, including CDL drivers. CDL drivers who test positive for marijuana will therefore be prohibited from performing a safety-sensitive function, including driving, unless and until they complete the onerous return to duty process. But what about non-CDL drivers? For example, those operating smaller vehicles that don't require a CDL. Well, what many fail to realize is that even those drivers who aren't subject to drug and alcohol testing rules are still prohibited from using marijuana by virtue of the physical qualification standards in Part 391 of the Federal Safety Regulations. Indeed, that regulation provides that a commercial driver is only qualified to operate a commercial motor vehicle if he or she does not use any Schedule I drug, which again includes marijuana. So any non-CDL driver who uses marijuana is technically not medically qualified to operate a commercial motor vehicle. Okay, so how does all this relate to CBD use? Well, as I said at the start, both hemp and marijuana contain CBD and THC, albeit in different concentrations. Thus, it's possible for an individual to test positive for marijuana, THC, on a drug test after using a CBD product if the THC concentration is high enough to exceed the applicable cutoffs. Now, often CBD manufacturers go to great lengths to advertise their products as containing no or very little THC to alleviate the concerns of its users. The problem is that unlike marijuana, there's virtually no regulation on the manufacturing and sale of CBD products, meaning manufacturers are not being held accountable for the representations that they make concerning their product. In other words, there are no real regulatory consequences for manufacturers who falsely claim that their products contain little to no THC. Now, the USDOT's Office of Drug and Alcohol Policy puts it this way when it says, the labeling of many CBD products may be misleading because the products could contain higher levels of THC than what the product label states. It remains unacceptable for any safety-sensitive employees subject to the DOT's drug testing regulations to use marijuana. And since the use of CBD products could lead to a positive drug test result, DOT-regulated safety-sensitive employees should exercise caution when considering whether to use CBD products. Now, by way of example, over just the past couple of years, we've seen many cases where commercial drivers have tested positive for marijuana after using a CBD product that was labeled as having little to no THC. For example, an Illinois-based truck driver recently filed a class action lawsuit against the manufacturer of CBD edibles after he tested positive for marijuana after consuming these edibles. Now, the label on those products indicated that the product contained no THC, which was obviously false. So the driver, who had worked for 10 years without a positive drug test, subsequently tested positive and was therefore prohibited from operating a commercial motor vehicle and lost his job because of it. So the takeaway here is that the use of CBD products by commercial drivers is and will remain risky from a regulatory perspective unless and until the FDA and other agencies begin to tighten their regulations on CBD products and their manufacturers with regards to labeling. Until then, drivers who use CBD products put themselves at risk for a positive drug test, which could prohibit them from operating a commercial motor vehicle unless they go through that onerous return to duty process. And that positive test would also show up on the driver's clearinghouse account for all future employers to see. So it's important, as the DOT says, to exercise extreme caution in this area for the foreseeable future. For an even more in-depth look at these types of regulatory topics, make sure you check out our comprehensive online regulatory courses over at trucksafeacademy.com and the detailed articles that we post on our website at trucksafeconsulting.com. Also, make sure to follow us on our various social media pages for the latest highway transportation news and analysis. Thanks for watching.